right, good evening, everyone. It is 6 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started this evening. This is the City Council Public Hearing Work Session for April the 16th, and the clerk will call the roll.
Mayor Brian Mock,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Paul Stovall,
Here.
Councilmember Jimmy First,
Here.
Councilmember John Mesa, Councilmember Leslie Robson, Councilmember Emerald Vythe.
All right, if we could get someone to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor? And that is unanimous. That'll take us down to announcements and presentations. We don't have anything tonight, right? All right, we'll go on into public hearing. I'll read the rules of order for public hearing. The hearing shall be presided over by the mayor. After calling the hearing to order, the mayor shall request the parcels of property which are subject to the zoning proposal be identified and read. Following such identification and reading, the development director's recommendation shall be presented. The mayor and city council shall cause the director's written recommendation to be made part of the record. Proponents of each proposed zoning decision shall then be allowed a total of 10 minutes for presentation of data, evidence, and opinion concerning the zoning decision. If all 10 minutes are not used, the proponent's remaining time may be reserved for rebuttal. Opponents of each proposed zoning decision shall then be allowed a total of 10 minutes for presentation of data, evidence, and opinion concerning each zoning decision. The presentation times may not be reduced, but may be extended by majority vote, provided they're expanded equally for proponents and opponents. Anyone wishing to speak must come to the microphone, give your name and address to the city clerk. Please do not speak unless you have the microphone and have been recognized. And with that, we'll move into the public hearing. First up this evening is 3600 American Drive.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Matt Adams, Planning and Development Director for the City of Chamblee. So as the Mayor just said, the first application is PZ 2026-1546, 3600 American Drive. This is for the construction of a dumpster in the side street yard of a commercial property along American Way. So this application is a result of code enforcement activity in 2023 for an unenclosed dumpster on the site. The variance requested would be to allow the dumpster and its enclosure to be located in the American Way street side yard. Subject property is a .986 acre lot located at the corner of American Drive and American Way. This is west of Chamblee City Hall and across from the Chamblee City Heights apartments. The single-story commercial building was constructed in the 1970s, and because of that, you can see on this site, there's an existing concrete pad that would serve as the location for the dumpster should council approve the requested variance. So because the existing structure was built in the 1970s and is situated on the lot in such a way that the American Way frontage is the only feasible location for the dumpster to be placed, that would still allow for adequate maneuverability for the construction trucks. Here you can see a close-up of the site plan with the dumpster location shown in blue. This frontage serves as the main parking and loading area for the property, making it a logical choice to locate waste collection containers there. So because of this, staff is recommending approval of the variance request as submitted.
Anyone here wishing to speak in favor of this item? All right. Hello. What was your name?
My name is Starsha Parton. I'm the applicant. The property owner was not able to come tonight, so I am here for him. Are applying for this variance because of the site layout doesn't allow for the trucks to safely access the back of the property. No? Great, thank you.
Anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of this item? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Very good. We'll move on to the next item. These items do come up later on in the agenda. There may or may not be questions from council at that time. Next up is 4849 Peachtree Road.
So this is PZ 2026-1637 for 4849 Peachtree Road. This is the Gala's Pizza location. So this is sort of involved, and I'll try to explain the various things because we get into some areas of existing nonconformity and then proposed nonconformity. So they are requesting a variance from section 260-5A to allow a roof sign onto an addition of a commercial property. So the property itself is located on Peachtree Road, directly across from the City of Chamblee, Brookhaven city limits. It backs up to the Southern Railroad right-of-way with MARTA on there as well, and is bordered on both sides by various uses, including restaurants, retail, and offices. These are photos of the existing conditions of the site. You'll note the existing pole sign and the unenclosed patio that is the subject of the variance request. The pole sign itself is legally non-conforming, meaning that it was legally constructed before adoption of the current prohibition against pole signs. And I'd also like to point out that the patio area directly under the sign, which is one of the factors related to this request. Here you see the site as a whole with the pole and patio area in the question at the top of the screen. The applicant is proposing to enclose the existing outdoor seating area to allow for a four-season patio use. You can see here that the proposed floor plan on the right would match the footprint of the existing patio shown on the left. On its own, the enclosure is compliant and there would be no issue with this design but for the impact it would have on the existing non-conforming pole sign. As I mentioned earlier, the pole sign is legally non-conforming. It's permitted to exist in its current configuration provided that its non-conformity with the UDO is not increased. However, with the inclusion of the patio, the pole becomes a roof sign. Roof signs are currently not permitted by the UDO, similar to pole signs, necessitating a variance to approve the project as currently proposed. In general, staff is supportive of the proposal as the sign itself would not be changing, and rather the conditions around it would be. And staff finds that a hardship exists in that the applicant would be forced to choose between keeping a sign and adding a patio that otherwise conforms to the requirements of the UDO. So because of this, staff is recommending approval of the variance conditioned upon the elevations dated received by the Planning and Development Department on February 17th, 2026.
Good. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this item?
Hi, my name is Anthony DiNardo. I'm the owner of Gala's Pizza and Tavern. I'm the applicant. I am proposing the enclosure and the variance on the sign. We purchased the business 2 years ago. We've been very, very fortunate. We put a lot of money to remodel and kind of reestablished a 25-year-old family business. We do a lot within the community when it comes to schools and a lot of the different parks. The patio for us is an area where when we have ball teams and people like that want to come over and reserve a space, we want to try to make that space usable year-round. And it's very difficult to do in a smaller inside. And so by having this available, it not only meets the needs of our business, but also meets the needs of the community. Thank you.
Anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of this item? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? All right, that'll take us down to 1900 and 1901 Century Boulevard, DCI.
Okay, so this is PZ 2026-1644 for 1900 and 1901 Century Boulevard. This is a development community impact, excuse me, for the construction of a 374,400 square foot, 5-story, 320 unit mixed-use building with 530 parking spaces and improved streetscapes on both sides of Century Boulevard. I'll note from the outset that the applicant has requested a deferral to allow additional information they've submitted to be reviewed by council and staff and open to the public prior to hearing on this case. Because of this, I won't be discussing the merits of the application at this time. I would instead request to move straight into the recommended action if council is so inclined.
Council okay with deferring this item to the May work session? And Matt, I believe you could just present in May, if that's okay, if everybody. Okay. all right. So-
Just because we have advertised, we would still need to call for public comment on it, but I just wanted to make sure that that was okay with council.
Anyone here wishing to speak in favor of this item?
Web 1105 West Peachtree Street, Atlanta, Georgia 30309 here on behalf of the applicant. I'm in favor of the application, and I just want to confirm what Matt said. We're asking for a 30-day deferral. Thank you.
Opposition? right, and council has agreed to move this to the May work session. All right, that'll take us down to 2145 Deering Circle.
Right, so similar to the last case, staff is requesting a deferral of this application. We've identified additional variances, waivers, and other zoning items that are required for this project in its current design. In order to ensure that those items are properly advertised, staff placed this item on an administrative hold, and we are recommending deferral to the May 14th council work session.
Pleasure to defer this item as well. All right, is anybody here wishing to speak in favor of this item? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? All right. Yeah. Hello.
Name's George Lloyd. I live at 2154 Deering Circle, which is across the street from this proposed variance development. And I just want to say I'm very strongly against it. It's going from a single building with 25% coverage for building and parking to 90% coverage, 13 condos squeezed into a narrow lot. It's going to affect all the neighbors live nearby. I've got several, raise your hands, neighbors up back there. And it just seems like a horrible overkill. This is the lot. It's like 13 condos where there was one house. It's going to change the neighborhood. Every tree, there's a lot of trees on that property, and all those will have to come down. You know, our street is pretty quiet, all single, family homes. And I feel like it'll change the character of the neighborhood. It's a drastic change from everything around it. There have been two other developments on the street, but they're closer to Beaufort Highway. And one of them, even though there's ample parking, people park on the street and walk to their condos because they're right at the street. And, it's like it's reduced the street to a one-way, a one-lane street. I don't know what they're going to do about garbage. If it's city pickup of garbage cans, there's going to be 13 garbage cans and 13 recycle bins, and there's not even that much room on the street to line them all up. Maybe they're planning to have a dumpster up there, I don't know. But, and then the last thing for me is I personally, one of the things I like about my house, we've been there since 2007, is it's very much like you're in nature. There's trees everywhere. We have hawks, owls, songbirds. I mean, you walk outside and all you hear is tweet, 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 dozens of birds, the different species. It's very nice, and this kind of development is what drives that away. And as a side point, it's currently a rental property. It's been that way since we moved in 2007. The two houses up the hill from that toward Beaufort Highway are also rental properties. I can just see these going the same way as this if this is approved. And then that will totally, I don't know what would be y'all's motivation to approve this, but it's just going to change the character of our neighborhood. And I apologize if I'm not more elegant. I'm not used to doing this, but I hope you will consider that.
Joining us. Anyone else here wishing to speak in opposition to this item? All right, seeing none, this item will move to the May work session. All right. Approval of minutes, we have 3 sets. Did anybody see anything that needed to be changed on those? All right, we'll keep moving. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, looks like we have 5 second reads on Tuesday. And that'll take us down to new business. First up, we have the alcohol ordinance amendments.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll have our attorney, Scott, come up and present this item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present on an overhaul to Chapter 6, the Alcoholic Beverage Code in the city of Chamblee. This is kind of a culmination of several changes that have been made over the years, and now we've sought to streamline and update the code to deal with current conditions in the city. Essentially, the major changes are, number one, to consolidate, clarify application requirements and the denial grounds and to put them more or less in one location as opposed to scattered throughout the code. Number two is to reorganize and clarify the grounds for revoking a license for alcoholic beverages. Number three is impose cost sharing for license appeals in a pretty fair and applicant-friendly way, but here, up until this point, licensing in the city, really the city's borne all the costs, and sometimes people will file an application and not have any skin in the game and drop the appeal after they've been denied or revoked. And so we've had some of those circumstances where they did a last-minute pullout and really, you know, had expenditures of the city that weren't necessary. So this imposes a cost sharing for license appeals that we think will be really helpful. Number four, we have also updated a little bit to adjust the timetable so that appeals can be resolved quicker. The longer things drag on or allowed to drag on, the more they cost. And really, we don't want to be in a situation where in June or July dealing with a license appeal that was rendered in March because of the current timeframes that are built in the ordinance. Number five, we're removing some defunct residency requirements and license suspension provisions. With regard to the residency requirement, there used to be a rule in the Georgia state laws that said if someone lived in a jurisdiction, a county or a city in Georgia, they could not go into another jurisdiction and get an alcohol license if their home jurisdiction was a dry or moist county, like maybe they didn't allow distilled spirit sales, but they allowed beer or wine. The state has done away with that regulation, and this just brings the city code to be sort of in compliance with what the state has done. Same thing with license suspensions. There was a provision in 6-51 that dealt with, well, you could do a 3-day suspension or do this $1,000 fine, and really the code is sufficient right now to write citations and have financial penalties for violations, but if those don't deter unlawful conduct under the alcohol code, you don't get anywhere by spending a lot of resources to have a hearing and so forth for a 3-day suspension. In the last 7.5 years, there haven't been any of those kinds of hearings. There have been no suspension hearings. They've either been just denials for blatant violations of the code or revocations for blatant violations of the code. So those are the big picture changes to the alcohol code. Another one that we're addressing is just evolving with the industry, and that is consumable hemp products. Obviously, since the last time there was a significant update to the alcohol code, the state of Georgia has stepped in and started to deal with consumable hemp products. These are beverages in our context that have psychoactive components that alter cognition and have similar impacts as alcohol. They're defined and they're regulated by state law. But we want to make it clear that we exclude those consumable hemp products from those and sales of those products from basically food and non-alcoholic beverage sales. We want to make sure that if you have something that acts like alcohol, it's not being treated the same as a food sale or a cover charge or a T-shirt or something that is not imbibing a psychoactive element. And then number three, we're basically the flip side of that same coin, counting consumable hemp product sales similar to alcohol sales so that, they can't count, like in a restaurant context, you have to have at least 50% of your revenue from the sale of food and non-alcoholic beverages. And so you would not be able, on that side of the equation, to count consumable hemp beverages as similar to food. And then four, we require alcohol licensing to maintain records on those sales. It's very consistent based on the state law definitions. Some of the operational regulations that seem to be an issue and that have been coming up over and over is making explicit in the code what is not there now, and that is a requirement that a manager or other responsible person be on site at any time the establishment is open. We've had police calls on numerous occasions, often in the middle of the night, at problem locations. They get there and nobody's there. that claims responsibility. They all claim that, they're not, no one's the manager, basically. Even though someone's trying to lock the door to block the police from coming in at 3 a.m., nobody is in charge. And so what the provision that we've added says is that you have to have the primary applicant, another applicant, and those are defined in the code, or a manager on site, or the police can close the business if there's no one responsible on the premises. Number two, it reorganizes current location rules for alcohol establishments. So right now in the code, the location rules for different types of alcohol establishments are in 3 different places. We've basically consolidated the buffer locations in section 6-46, and we spelled it out. If you have liquor by this, liquor sales, it's this. If you have beer sales, it's this. If it's wine sales, we just made it all in one section where people can go, these are the buffers, because some of them derive from state law, some of them from the city. This just makes the code easier to follow. We had an appeal hearing earlier this year where an applicant for distilled package store, liquor package store, applied, and they satisfied all the requirements in 6-46, and they got a surveyor to write that, but they didn't look at a separate provision in 6-96 that applied to liquor package stores, and they were upset when they got a denial, and then they appealed, and then they didn't show up for the appeal. So we just want to be in the business of excuse removal, frankly, for that kind of thing, so that we're not wasting resources because people think they have a case and they don't. And then number 3, we're adding a 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. closing time for packaged liquor stores. There is a rule right now for when they can sell, and it's kind of obvious that a packaged liquor store, if they have to stop selling at 11:45, they can't be open at 1 a.m. But this just makes it clear that 15 minutes after the stop of sales time, the business has to be closed to the public. One other thing that is not a part of this, but I want to bring to your attention that we have drafted and that we'll be providing to staff in the next week here, is we've had from the police a recurring problem of businesses that were event halls. They got a license as event hall. The UDO term is event center, but they come in, they get an occupation tax certificate, and really what they are is an illegal nightclub, and they're open at 2 or 3 in the morning doing alcohol, and the alcohol piece is illegal because they don't have the license. But what they argue is that, well, we can be open at 2 a.m. as an event hall, but there's really no reason for that. So what we are proposing that we will bring to council, and I've talked to Kristen briefly about this, is just a provision in the Chapter 6 that says if you're an event hall, you can have your event, but it has to cease at midnight because absent an alcohol license, there would be no reason why you have a 3 a.m. event, like a birthday party or wedding reception or whatever. So those are the updates to the operational regulations. We're also repealing some provisions that restrict free speech, activities that are going to be problematic under current constitutional case law, which is kind of the realm that I deal in most of the time. These are some, number one, some legacy advertising restrictions that are some blanket bans on advertising alcohol outside of a business premises. Very similar regulations were struck down several years ago by the Georgia Supreme Court in a case out of Folsom, out of the city of Jasper, Georgia. And then another provision is a limitation on live music and patron dancing at consumption on premises businesses. If you regulate in an alcohol code or a business license code specifically on quote-unquote entertainment or music, that has First Amendment implications. And what we found when we've dealt with issues, and we have had this not in the last 3 or 4 years, but maybe 5, 6 years ago, is that the rules for consumption on premises restaurants that can have alcohol sales, you already have rules that 70% of the area of the establishment has to be dedicated to patron seating and dining tables. And there's other restrictions in building configuration requirements that have solved these problems without regulating something that would trigger First Amendment scrutiny, basically. So we have adequate regulations to deal with what we're removing, is what I'm saying. And then I know there's some discussion items, and I'll be ready to take questions. I know one of those is the CPA verification of alcohol and food sales affidavit. Right now, every consumption on premises establishment has to provide a food sales affidavit at renewal. If this is a late-night establishment, meaning they're going to be open after 12:30 a.m., then they have a safety plan and some additional regulations they have to comply with, but they have to have their food sales affidavit verified by CPA. We don't regularly require that for outside of that category, let's say. However, I will say that in 6-4C3, which is in the current code, there is a provision for the finance director as head of this type of licensing to require any affidavit on food and alcohol sales to be verified by a CPA. So there's some flexibility there on an as-needed basis. If the council wants to venture into maybe having this at the first renewal and then every 2 years thereafter, I mean, we can workshop that and adjust according to the council's desire. We have a lot of flexibility in that. And I think that's it for my presentation.
Good. Any questions from council?
Great job taking 70 pages and distilling it down to
Yeah, I
6.
was like, what level of weeds do we need here?
Hopefully it'll ease some of the burden of our police department on these late-night establishments that are giving us so much trouble. So I'm glad to see this. I'm sorry, Councilmember.
No, you go ahead. We usually want to start at the bottom and work your way up, but you know, hey, you know. So I was definitely had a concern, and I think Jimmy did too, about requiring the CPA affidavit every year, annually for all. And I would be much more in favor of things like the first year, obviously, because all they do is begin to get a license. They don't really present any actual documents. They don't have any sales. They don't have anything. So the year one, and then I would say things like triggering events, like might be the change, and you know, like they were serving beer and they decided to serve liquor. Well, that would be an automatic change, or just something that's a substantial business change. You know, not operating as usual. Maybe adding a patio onto there, something, you know, maybe that's not enough, I don't know. Maybe if they put a new bar on it, then that would be, you know, anyway. And then the last thing would be any triggering, like a violation, yes,
Yeah,
citation.
citation or
And
violation, yeah.
so that's kind of, so the people that are flying straight, they've been in business several years, you know, and we don't have any cause for concern, then they can continue to, under what the current code allows. That's kind of what I was thinking. I would want to work with staff to figure out how those triggering events or whatever they might be identified. I'd want it to be more automatic, and less like, because we did have it in at least one occasion where they said, well, why are you asking me? You're not asking anybody else. So I just want to, and I know we still have that option, but I'd rather not. I'd rather have it just be like, yeah.
Yeah, have it be triggered by an objective fact.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
we
that's,
can work with staff to do
everything
that.
else is, can you go back to page 1? I think it was one of your bullet points. I can't even remember what it was, but there was something on there that, well, I can't remember what it was, so
if
something just clicked in my head, and now I can't remember what it is. But if anybody, maybe I'll think about it after other people have talked.
If you remember it, you can shoot us an email and we'll
Sure.
address it before first reading next week.
Regarding the CPA piece, I hear what you're saying. My biggest concern is there's a change in management, change in ownership, and then who is flying straight all of a sudden decides that they're going to veer off with broken wing, however you want to phrase it. So I'd be more in favor of time intervals. Again, 2 years, every 3 years, you have to, so it's not as onerous to the business, but also triggering events on top of that. But I'm open to discussion on that.
And it's not necessarily an either or. It could be a both and. It could be citation. It could be substantial change in the business model, and every 3 years or something like that. Yeah.
just knowing our enterprising folks out there, they might say, one good year, that's all we need. Now we throw caution to the wind.
This is a story of give an inch to take a mile, and unfortunately, we've seen that a lot, yes.
Right, I think that it does need to be codified so that we're not leaving it up to our staff to make a decision about it.
Yes. Right, yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the things we've done with removing some of the provisions is some of the things that probably should not be discretionary. Now our denial decisions, if you've been denied under A, B, C, and D, this is the bar, period. If you've been denied under this, it may only be 3 months, like if you didn't have adequate food sales at a restaurant for a period. So I think this is we have the graduated sanctions, so to speak, in there, but for doing something like requiring the CPA affidavit, it should be triggered by objective events. Just for scope, Kaylee was helpful real on the fly today, just pulling together the numbers. There are 126 alcohol licensees. About 50 of them are consumption on premises, and that's who this CPA affidavit or the food sales affidavit applies to. And there are probably almost a third of those that might qualify as late-night establishments that already have to do the CPA verification on their affidavit. So we're really talking about, it is an additional burden, but then we're talking about, I think, mostly legitimate businesses that probably have CPAs do their books anyway, so I don't know that the burden is that great. Yeah.
Taxes, this is normal operating procedure, right? And if you're above board business, you should have all this categorized in your POS system, very easy to present, and just taking it to a certified CPA to get an affidavit, correct?
And a lot of these are probably filing 941 quarterly tax returns anyway, so, yeah.
We have a lot of questions around pouring on Sundays. Could you touch on that a little bit, and mostly around state law and why that prohibits us for allowing our businesses in the city of Chamblee to pour on Sundays?
Yeah, so Sunday sales are regulated under 3-3-7. They're pretty, it's a super long chapter and lots of detail about whether it's a county of 800,000 or whatever. But the main thing is this: you have to be an eating and drinking establishment, which for functional purposes under the city's ordinance and Doraville's ordinance and Sandy Springs and all those, that's the same as a restaurant. So under state law, to sell on Sunday, with some limited exceptions, you have consumption on the premises, you have to be a restaurant, you have to have more than 50% of your revenue derived from, food and meals prepared on the premises, and non-alcoholic beverages or just non-alcohol sales. There are some exceptions to that. So for example, under 3-3-7 subpart O, I think state law has carved out an example for bowling centers. So back before John Walker went and left us for the beach, we had an issue with Bullmore, and we were able to address that by a code that really aligned city ordinance with state law. But what we are wanting to be careful of is that we don't want to go out like some jurisdictions in Georgia that will remain unnamed that have started licensing things that are just seemingly flatly contradictory and not allowed by state law, because then we run into the trouble of the DOR comes and they say, but the city gave us a permit to do that, which the DOR regulations prohibit. So that's really the main constraint. It's not so much a policy judgment, it's just from a legal perspective is our authority to regulate alcohol is derivative of the state. And so we just try to stay within our lane on that.
So if I understand you correctly, there's unnamed jurisdictions out there that are doing this, right? They're just choosing not to enforce on Sundays per state law, or they're writing ordinances in a way that circumvents state law.
And you snuck in something about 80,000 people. Did you?
No, I was just saying.
Okay, I just wondered if there's an exception for bigger jurisdictions.
The state statute on Sunday sales is a super long section. The reason it's so long is it's almost like this was pieced together over decades, and there was a special rule if you were in a county of a population over 800,000, and the special rule if it was between 200 and 400. So there's just complicated rules. But the bottom line of that is you have to be a restaurant. You have to meet the 50% food sales rule to sell for consumption on the premises on Sunday, unless you fit a bowling type state law exception. Yeah, right, exactly. And let me say, I don't know exactly how these other jurisdictions, they're not jurisdictions I
Just to
represent.
interrupt real quick, you didn't answer my question.
Oh, sorry.
About jurisdictions, about the jurisdictions that are choosing not to enforce or creating ordinances that may circumvent or on their face circumvents to sell on Sunday.
Yeah, what I was going to say is I don't represent those jurisdictions, so I don't know exactly how they're justifying it. But I can tell you, when one of these questions came up in one of my representations with the DOR, and I had to call the DOR, and it's like, how is this working? I read this regulation in the DOR regs and the state statute, and he's like, I don't know how they got the state license. So sometimes this is happening where the DOR is giving a license for an activity that seems counter to the DOR regulations, and the city's running, giving the local license for it, and the DOR lawyer, at least I've talked to, couldn't explain how they jive. So that's the best I got.
So from a conservative standpoint, it's best for us to play in the gray area. Would that be your counsel on that?
I think that these, yes, I think it's best to only license the types of alcohol sales activities for which the state law provides that a license can be obtained. That's it.
We had a lot of discussion about food halls and how those are regulated, and are they run through the central POS? Do they just park food trucks outside, and they all have, so you have 3 independent businesses, but one guy claiming he's a restaurant because he has 3 food trucks parked in his parking lot and that kind of stuff. And then another person was arguing about food halls, and I said, well, they didn't even have food, so how can you be a food hall without food? You can't be a restaurant or a food hall if you don't have food. So that was kind of some of the this gyrations, and that was part of the impetus of trying to get this done, is some clarifying, just to answer all those questions about
And I think a lot of,
variations.
I think, Councilmember Mesa, to your point, I think a lot of this is sort of societal and industry evolution that the state law is just dragging behind. I don't think that the General Assembly wouldn't allow for things. It's just that cities are getting ahead, and the industry is getting ahead of what state law allows. And how much this city of Chamblee wants to be on the bleeding edge of that, we don't have a dog in that fight, but we just want to let the council know what the law is, basically, on it.
All right, we have the resolution to extend the moratorium. You doing that one too?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Because we are tentatively taking the amendments up for first read on Tuesday night, the next council meeting where you would take it up for vote falls after the sunset of the existing alcohol license moratorium for new alcohol licenses. And so because it's still kind of a work product in flux, we are requesting a 30-day extension of that moratorium so that you have an opportunity to vote on a new amendment. And also staff has some time to update paperwork, processes, all of that for the new code. And then currently we're not accepting alcohol licenses, so I would just say that from a management standpoint, we can start working with folks once we get the final language of the new ordinance in that time period, so they're not prohibited from reaching out or providing any kind of documentation to us, but that we wouldn't accept an actual completed alcohol license application until 30 days after that, until the new extended deadline.
Good. Questions from council? No? All right. Thanks, Kristen. All right, under staff action items this evening, we have the Q4 2025 budget amendment. Ms. Julie?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Julie Pirro, Finance Director. In an effort to make sure everything is aligned and ready for the audit, which starts next week, I'm presenting the Q4 2025 budget amendment. And this small picture up here is the budget amendment. This includes updates to the general fund, multi-grants fund, ARPA state fund, Special Service District, and our sanitation fund. And I'll start with the general fund. The adjustments were primarily driven from public safety and administrative costs. Public safety increased in overtime, fuel, and insurance, while our administrative costs are largely due to higher legal expenses. Luckily, these overages are fully offset by other departments that had surplus or had savings in delayed projects. And some of those departments were Public Works, Economic Development, Parks, and Planning. There is no overall increase to the budget and no impact to fund balance. Also, within the general fund, we had $550,000 associated for site improvements for the Real-Time Crime Center, and that is going to be reclassified through this budget amendment. And these costs should move to our new ARPA state grant fund, which I'll talk about now on the next page. The multiple grants fund and ARPA State Grant Fund are merging together. We're reclassifying and moving funds from one fund to the other based on a recommendation from our 2024 audit from the auditors that recommended separating these police activities into a dedicated fund. And those are for the Violent Crime Reduction Grant and for the Real-Time Crime Center. So we established that grant in 2024, but we adopted the money in 2025. So we are asking for the amendment to transfer these funds from the multi-grant fund to the new fund that we established. And the $550,000 that was in the general fund will now move over to the ARPA fund as a transfer from the general fund. And both these grants are reimbursable by the state, and revenues are reflected to represent any expected reimbursement, excuse me. The next section is the Special Services District Fund. We had some minor adjustments there for the cost of some flock equipment and site improvements that we made, and that will be funded through the available fund balance. And then finally, in the sanitation fund, we had a small overage for landfill costs, and that will be covered by the fund balance as well. I'm available for any questions.
Questions for Julie on the 2025 budget? All right, we'll move on down to 2026.
Switching it up a little bit.
I see. All kinds of people with us tonight.
We're just keeping you guessing tonight. All right, Daria Kriskus, I'm the Budget and Strategy Manager. I'm going to present the Q1 2026 budget amendment. If you could switch to the next slide. This is pretty simple. It's doing essentially two things. The first is the general fund and the downtown SSD. There's a transfer of $116,300 to the general fund. It doesn't change the intent of the funds, which is to for personnel for the downtown district to beautify and take care of grounds and green spaces and things like that. It's just per the recommendation of our auditors to move it that way. So that's that one. And then below is the Stormwater Enterprise Fund, a $100,000 transfer from Stormwater to the PFA fund, and that mirrors a change that was approved in the Public Facilities Authority budget back in March. So just trying to meet that on the other side, and that's all. Any questions? Sorry?
Thank you.
Read all the slides, actually.
I wouldn't have told him that. All right, that'll take us down to Rail Trail Segment 7 to 12 right-of-way acquisition.
I'm going to present this one as well. This is an item just recommending that, authorization for the mayor to sign this contract, and it is a GDOT requirement to help us keep pushing along to allow us to, move along into the right-of-way acquisition phase of this project.
No. But we're getting closer. We're going to keep going for those
How
administrative
close are
modifications.
we getting?
Well, we just got the approval for the administrative modification, and that brought it up to, what was the total, 600 and,
I think it's, I don't want to misspeak, but I think 600,000 federal and then another amount in addition for the local match. So a total of 800,000, I want to say, something.
we're getting there.
Yeah, we can get this trail done yet. All right, that'll take us,
For our audience, right-of-way acquisition is necessary for these projects, like our rail trail projects and things like that. And this is what holds us up. This is what makes it take 6 times as long as you would think it would take, and probably 6 times as long as it does take in the private sector. But this is the public sector, and we do everything that we're supposed to do so that we don't have to go back and pay for anything that we've done wrong. So we're getting there on our rail trails.
Especially when GDOT is involved.
good. All right, we have the Peachtree Boulevard realignment, 60% design cost share.
Thank you, Mayor. So similar to our TIP-funded project, the CID has initiated a project with, for the Peachtree Boulevard realignment. Representatives, the Chair, Josh Harrison, and Executive Director Malika Rivers are here this evening. But we are in the thick of the concept development. I believe we just are in the process of finalizing that so that we can move to design, the design phase of that project. And so with the cost coming in on this project, as it includes a pedestrian bridge and some substantial engineering and right-of-way and all of that good stuff, the costs have, of course, increased substantially. You've gotten information on that, and we've had some conversations about that. But with the cost of the project as a whole going up, of course, the cost for design has gone up as well. And the pedestrian bridge component of that project is obviously a very large and important priority for both Doraville and Chamblee. And so the CID is requesting some allocation of funds from both cities to help cover the cost of design for the pedestrian component of that project. And so it would be a total of $46,800 for Chamblee's portion. Doraville has already approved their portion last week, I believe. And I will kick it over to Josh or Malika if you guys have any questions about that.
Did you want to come up and tell us anything good? Very good. Any questions from council? Glad to see. Thank you for partnering with us on this. Glad to see this project. It's a long time in the making. All right, we've got the Keswick Park Master Plan Implementation Project.
For your consideration tonight is the notice of award for the Keswick Park Master Plan Implementation Project. Following a competitive process with 6 proposals, staff recommends awarding the contract to Foresight Group LLC for an amount not to exceed $510,500. Their team demonstrated the strongest technical expertise in civil engineering and landscape architecture, and they have a proven track record with similar park projects. We are requesting approval of this award and authorization for the city manager to execute the final documents. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Arts Master Plan. Well, everybody's getting an opportunity tonight, aren't they?
It feels like a pageant of some
That's
sort.
just
Everybody's
like-
just walking down the runway, coming back. It's a very long,
Tryouts.
distinguished walk.
Price is right.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Tanisha Jones, Public Arts Manager. And tonight I am here to request approval to begin work on a new Arts Master Plan. Our last Arts Master Plan was completed in 2019, which, as you know, was before COVID. And although we have hit most, if almost just barely all of the points on the Arts Master Plan, it is time to have a new one that reflects our community as it is now. So we are working with Designing Local. They are the same company that did our last one, and they have a contract that I am requesting the mayor to sign, not to exceed $55,000. And if needed, on the next slide, we do have the timeline. I know that was a bit of a concern a few months ago, and they did give us a timeline. Any questions?
They were really good. I participated in the last master plan, and they were really good. They asked a lot of good questions that seemed to be more business operating, less artsy-fartsy oriented. So I appreciated that. But no, it was a good. They were a good group, and so we got. I thought it was a good plan.
Yeah, it was a good
Okay.
plan. Are we going to proceed the same way with the public input sessions and all that stuff too?
Correct, yeah.
I'm glad that you used that term too, because now there's two of us that said it. So
Well, I like the definition of artsy-fartsy.
Thank you, Tanisha. All right, we have the grant for the stormwater wetland retrofit. That was a mouthful. Who's got that? Oh, Todd.
Yeah, you get me tonight. Todd Hill, Director of Public Works. That was a hard act to follow, but I'll try my best. We are seeking a non-point source implementation grant under Section 319H of the Clean Water Act to the Georgia Environmental Protection Division. This grant requires a 40% match and they'll pay 60%. And our application deadline's April 30th. Our proposed project is a retrofit of the wetland area along the rail trail at Peachtree Industrial Boulevard. And it's an overgrown corner right there that holds water and everything, and it's been an eyesore for a long time. And this gives us an opportunity to go ahead and retrofit it into a nice wetland area that actually provides water quality. That project is currently under design by Kimley Horn, and we expect the cost of that project to be $350,000. So the grant amount would be $210,000, and our match would be $140,000. I know in the past we've had some difficulties with administering our grants on 319H grants, and they drug on for a long time. We're lucky that we have Amanda Hauer, our stormwater manager, because in her previous job she managed all the 319H grants, FEMA grants, and environmental impact bonds for the city of Atlanta. So she has extensive experience, so it should move quickly through the administration portion and get built quickly.
Questions from council? Good job, Todd. All right, that takes us down to 3297 and 3289 Hardy Avenue.
Thank you, Mayor. You all heard this one last month, and it was deferred. The vote was deferred so that it could go with the first read or the second reads and the vote for on the future land use map and the zoning. So we have no presentation for this.
All right, so we'll move that to next week. That circles us back to 3600 American Drive. This is the dumpster enclosure. Any comments from council? Questions?
So, am I correct in that, I read this last week, the agenda last week, and have not seen any updates to it, but they're proposing to build this out of wood?
That is correct. It does not. One of the allowable materials in the ordinance is wood. That was changed, I believe, in 2021 to be one of the allowable materials for a dumpster enclosure. So if City Council is so inclined to put a condition on a materiality change, we're happy to enforce that.
I just want to say thank you for the investment you've made in Chamblee and for all of the, we're talking about Gallows, right?
Yes.
No? Okay, just make sure. The investment you made in Chamblee, congratulations on all your success you've had since you've made the investment.
Anything else? All right.
Just that I'm suddenly hungry.
You're suddenly hungry? All right, we have Century Boulevard. Did council want to make any comments on that tonight? Okay, Deering Circle, we good? All right, that'll move us down to mayor and council items. Doesn't look like anybody has anything this week. I will take a point of personal privilege to welcome our class, Chamblee 101. Thank you guys for going through this process and giving up of your time for the last how many weeks? 11, 9, 10? A long time. But thank you all for giving of your time and going through this process, and thank you for being with us tonight to see how council, what we call us, how the sausage is made. It's not always beautiful, but it's a process. Yeah, Leslie says it tastes good, but I'm a vegetarian. So.
So, I guess the question I have for the class is, does this make you want to run for council, or does it make you say, I don't want to do this ever?
It's not so bad.
You want to talk about dumpsters?
It's
We got,
not so
we
bad.
got room for y'all.
That's a loaded question.
It's not so bad. All right, that'll take us down to public comments. The mayor is the presiding officer. All remarks shall be addressed to the city council as a body, not to individual members. Anyone wishing to speak shall come to the microphone, give your name and address to the city clerk. Limit remarks to 3 minutes unless further time is granted by council, and not speak a second time until everyone wishing to speak has spoken once. No one can speak more than twice. Please do not speak unless you have the microphone and have been recognized. Anyone wishing to address council this evening? Anyone? No one? The whole class here, no one wants to, nothing? Nothing? All right, do we have executive session this evening? I was afraid of that.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to enter executive session for pending litigation.
A motion and a second to enter executive session. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you all for being with us this evening.
Yes, Mr. What's-his-name had nothing to say. He left before the end of the meeting.
Mr.
Motion to exit executive session.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to exit executive session. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right.
See you guys at the bar.